At 89 years old, Apollo astronaut Charles Duke is finally breaking his silence about what he witnessed on the moon, and it's not the story you've been told. Duke's place in history is unlike anyone else's. He's the voice who guided Neil Armstrong to that first step from mission control and, later, the youngest human to leave footprints on the lunar surface. After decades of watching Apollo 16 fade into the shadows of more famous missions, Duke is ready to share the unfiltered truth. But the question is, what exactly has NASA overlooked for more than 50 years? The funny thing about Charles Duke is that before he ever set foot on the moon, the world already knew his voice. Millions of people watching the Apollo 11 broadcast heard him speak from mission control in Houston with his thick southern drawl, steady but full of emotion. When Armstrong announced, "The Eagle has landed," it was Duke who replied, "Roger, tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again." That single line made him part of history before his boots ever touched lunar dust. And yet, Duke wasn't the one getting the ticker tape parade. He wasn't the man planting a flag. He was the invisible astronaut, the voice in the background guiding giants while quietly waiting for his own chance. That dual role shaped him in ways few people appreciate today. Think about it. When you're Capcom, you are the lifeline between Earth and space. Every word you speak is filtered through the pressure of millions of viewers, every slip or hesitation magnified. And for Apollo 11, there was zero room for error. Duke carried that weight in his voice, and when Armstrong and Aldrin touched down safely, he shared in their triumph, not as a passenger but as a guardian. But that role came with a strange psychological twist. Imagine being the calm guide who talks humanity through its greatest leap while knowing you're still stuck on the ground. You live the mission in your bones, but from the wrong side of the glass. Duke later admitted that the tension of those moments never left him. He wasn't just a voice. He was a participant who had to hold back the deepest urge to be there himself. That's what makes his later mission so unusual. Unlike Armstrong, Collins, or Aldrin, Duke didn't just carry the memory of walking on the moon. He carried the double vision of being both earthbound and moonbound, of being the one who steadied voices trembling in space and the one who later heard his own voice echoing inside a helmet on another world. And here's the part that gets overlooked. No other living astronaut has quite this perspective. Duke is the only man who was both the emotional anchor of Apollo 11 and the explorer of Apollo 16. His words from Houston were replayed worldwide, his southern drawl recognized across continents, yet he remained a name few could place to a face. Invisible, until he wasn't. In recent interviews, Duke has opened up about what that duality really meant. He said guiding Armstrong and Aldrin felt like being a father watching his kids take their first steps. When he finally got to walk on the moon himself, he couldn't help but compare the experience, seeing firsthand what he once only imagined from mission data and grainy video feeds. That contrast gave him an insight nobody else could claim. For decades, he kept most of these reflections quiet, overshadowed by the bigger names and louder stories. But now, in his late 80s, Duke is finally breaking the silence. And it matters, because his story isn't about aliens or lost civilizations. It's about how being both the invisible witness and the hands-on explorer makes him the ultimate lunar guide. So, when he tells us today that we missed something about the moon, it isn't just another astronaut reminiscing. It's a man with two vantage points, finally stitching them together. But here's the cliffhanger. When Duke finally reached the lunar surface, what he saw wasn't what he had prepared for in all those long hours in Houston. It didn't match the simulations, the data, or even the stories Armstrong and Aldrin had brought back. His experience challenged everything he thought he knew about our celestial neighbor. And the question we have to ask is, what exactly did Charles Duke see on the moon that made him speak out now, before time runs out? When Charles Duke finally stepped out of the lunar module on Apollo 16, he expected to see the moon exactly the way he had trained for: gray dust, jagged rocks, and endless emptiness. But what hit him first wasn't the surface. It was the sky, or rather, the absence of it. Imagine standing outside at night, looking up at the stars. Now strip the stars away, strip the faint glow, strip even the suggestion of atmosphere. Above Duke's helmet wasn't just darkness. It was a black so absolute it felt like falling into nothing. He called it an incredible contrast, the deepest black sky against the almost blinding brightness of the lunar surface. Photographs never captured it, he said, because no camera could balance that range. To the human eye, the difference was staggering. That revelation stuck with him for decades. On Earth, your vision adjusts between shadows and sunlight. But on the Moon, the sharp divide never faded. Every boulder looked crisp as if etched with a knife, every shadow cut like an ink line on paper. Duke later admitted that people looking at the Apollo photos assumed that's the full picture. In truth, the cameras flattened what was overwhelming in person. What he saw was a reality no photograph could honor. And here's the twist that still surprises people: they couldn't even see Earth. The most iconic image we think of, the blue marble hanging over a barren horizon, wasn't visible at all from where Apollo 16 landed. The Earth was directly overhead, positioned out of sight. Duke explained that if he tried to look up, all he saw was the inside of his helmet. The suit design blocked the very view most of us imagine as the highlight of being there. Think about that. Humanity assumes every moonwalker spent hours staring at Earthrise, overwhelmed by the beauty of home hanging in the void. In reality, Apollo 16's crew couldn't see it without craning awkwardly backward, which was impossible in the stiff suits. Duke said it bluntly: looking straight up, you were looking at the opaque side of your helmet. The most poetic scene in pop culture never existed for him. This is why he's speaking out now. He wants people to understand the truth, not the myth. The Moon wasn't a glossy postcard. It was brutal, stark, and limited by the very technology that kept them alive. The helmet itself narrowed their world. With a field of view like a fishbowl, Duke could see forward but not up or around without twisting his entire body. Peripheral vision was gone. That meant exploring the lunar surface wasn't just awe-inspiring, it was clumsy and disorienting. He described trying to survey a ridge while fighting against a suit that refused to let him turn his head naturally. It wasn't the free, panoramic sweep we see in documentaries. It was a struggle inside hardware designed for survival, not comfort. Yet even within those limits, the emotional weight was crushing. Duke said that incredible contrast between black and white wasn't just visual, it felt spiritual. Imagine the universe erased of gradients. No soft skies, no distant haze, no clouds drifting lazily. Just light and void. He admitted that, standing there, he realized for the first time how alien the Moon really was. It wasn't another desert. It wasn't another mountaintop. It was an environment that didn't care if he existed. And that contrast is what he believes history misunderstood. We've reduced the Moon to a backdrop, a grayscale stage for heroic poses. Duke insists that what the astronaut saw was more shocking than any headline. It wasn't about planting a flag or taking a photo. It was about being swallowed by extremes that the human mind wasn't built to process. So why is he talking now, after 50 years? Because, as he puts it, the misconceptions have piled up. Movies, posters, and even NASA's own PR sold a version of the Moon that doesn't line up with what the crew actually experienced. He wants to correct the record before his voice is gone. And his correction is simple: the Moon wasn't beautiful in a comfortable way. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. That raises a question for us. If even the most iconic images left out the raw truth, then how much of our collective memory of Apollo is built on curated illusion? Duke's memories don't just add color. They strip away the filter. And yet, Duke says the visuals were only half the story. The part he's most passionate about today isn't the sky or the shadows. It's what they actually achieved on the ground, the science that history barely remembers. So, here's the real question: what discoveries from Apollo 16 have been buried under the glamour of footprints and photographs, and why does Duke believe they matter more than the images we celebrate? While the world still obsesses over Apollo 11, the first step, the flag, the grainy broadcast, Charles Duke never forgets that Apollo 16 quietly pulled off achievements that changed lunar science forever. The problem? Almost nobody remembers them. And this eats at him. Because what he and John Young did wasn't just following Armstrong's footsteps. they built something new, something history almost buried. Take this: Apollo 16 set up the very first telescope on the Moon. Not in orbit, not on Earth, literally planted on lunar soil. A far-ultraviolet telescope designed to capture light blocked by Earth's atmosphere. For the first time, humanity looked at the stars from a platform with no air, no distortion. Duke later called it a window into the universe that no observatory on Earth could match, a milestone most textbooks barely mention. And the mission wasn't short. Duke and Young spent 71 hours on the surface, nearly 3 full days, longer than many other Apollo crews. They weren't sightseeing. They were working. Driving the lunar rover across 16 miles of rugged terrain, hammering rocks, drilling cores, and hauling back material. By the time they left, they had collected 209 pounds of samples, some of the most geologically diverse ever retrieved. Even today, labs are still analyzing pieces Duke carried home. What makes this even more impressive is the instruments they hauled along. Apollo 16 carried X-ray and gamma-ray spectrometers to map the Moon's chemical composition. These weren't gadgets. They revealed hidden fingerprints of iron, titanium, and magnesium, clues that reshaped theories about how the Moon formed. Scientists still cite that data. Yet when people talk about Apollo, it's 11, 13, maybe 17. 16 slips through the cracks. And Duke feels that sting. His admitted Apollo 16 deserves more than a footnote. He knows it lacked the drama of Apollo 13's near disaster or the romance of Armstrong's first words. But in pure science, it was unmatched. His frustration is simple: if we forget the science, we've missed the very point of risking lives to go there. Still, Duke wasn't just a scientist. He was human, trapped in one of the harshest places imaginable, finding ways to break the tension. Enter the Lunar Olympics. During downtime, Duke and Young tried hopping like high jumpers. Duke managed a leap that sent him flying higher than expected, and when he landed, he fell backward. It could have been fatal. The backpack life support wasn't built for crashes. He later admitted it was stupid, but it reminded them they were still men, not machines. Even in lighter moments, Duke never lost sight of the mission. Every rock bag, every mile across the Descartes Highlands added to knowledge still reshaping planetary science. And yet, documentaries recycle Armstrong's footprint, Aldrin's salute, Lovell's radio calls. Apollo 16, one of the richest in discovery, barely rates a mention. That's why Duke has become more vocal. He's spoken out, given talks, and pushed museums to showcase Apollo 16's contributions. He knows time is short. He wants future generations to understand Apollo wasn't just flags and politics, it was unlocking secrets hidden in dust and stone. And here's the kicker: some of Apollo 16's data is still being reanalyzed today, half a century later. In a sense, his mission is still alive. This leads to the tension defining his final years. Duke doesn't just want to celebrate Apollo 16. He wants to defend it. Because if Apollo 16's triumphs can be overshadowed, what happens when people start claiming the whole thing never happened at all?